What did you talk about? Zosha?
Are you two sisters?
No.
Friends, then?
Sure.
Roommates?
Sometimes.
Yeah, that was not that serious. I know that Carol specified mi esposa when Manousos was looking through her house. He was aware that she's a lesbian, so it's like conceivable that he heard the tone of her voice on the phone and understood that she and Zosha were romantically involved. But I thought it was funny because never have I ever seen a man actually assume two women are lesbians together. When Zosha said that he had asked very specific questions, I was like, is Manousos writing his own Zosha and Carol fan fiction? Like, how specific? But I should definitely start off reflecting on episode 9 by talking about the opening, because I mean, I think the opening itself had me like really expecting that this episode was going to go differently. My overall take is that I really liked the episode, but it was not at all what I expected, which is not a bad thing. It's just was totally different. I was just wrong. But it was still a really good episode. The opening sequence with Kusumayo having decided that she is going to join the PLUR1BUS, she seems a little nervous about it, but she's still convicted that she's going to do it. And she's being really like supported by, I believe it was her aunt and her cousin, making her feel really comfortable. They're singing, they're like practicing all of her traditions that make her feel like this is a form of joining her family and a form of joining her people, and joining the hive mind as being one with her people. And like, actually what killed me was that even before she fully turned and was a part of the PLUR1BUS, when she was like having her seizure, that was when the singing stopped. And in my mind, I was like, just give it until she's officially a part of the PLUR1BUS. Like, that was the saddest part to me, was like, you know, once she's a part of the PLUR1BUS, I guess her consciousness is very satisfied to be there. But there was like a second in between, actually more than a second. There were several seconds in between when she was like having this seizure on the ground and the singing stopped. And I would have been like, oh my God, what have I done? And that's what the goat thought. What have you done? What have you done with Kusumayo? So that opening happened, and it made me think that like they were really setting us up to be against the PLUR1BUS. Like, after watching that, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm on board, Carol. Let's take them down. Like, I know we watched the Charm Offensive, and Zosha was very charming, and we liked this little romance you had going on, but you're secretly keeping that whiteboard, and everything's gonna be okay, right? You're like, we're all on the same page here. Like, we're gonna take these guys down, and somebody's gonna get unjoined in this episode. And that's really, really, really what I thought was going to happen. And that is not the direction that they went at all. And I personally don't think it's a bad thing that they didn't go in that direction. This episode really showed me that the plot of season 1 has really been so much more about Carol's psyche and Carol's internal life, what she wants from the PLUR1BUS. You know, obviously being staunchly against them, and they killed her wife and she's been mourning, and now, almost as a means of mourning, as a part of the mourning, or as a part of the grief process, she's been seeking joy, and seeking joy through the PLUR1BUS and like the calm and the organization and the access that they provide, and the companionship and, you know, romance and whatever. I was surprised when in the next scene it was pretty obvious that, like, when Zosha was showing Carol that Manousos was coming, and she was saying that, you know, she shouldn't be here, but you don't have to be here either. And Carol saying, well, I might as well. I owe it to him to be here. He traveled so far. I thought it was like kind of a big leap from where we had left off in episode 8, because in episode 8, I saw that Carol had been moved by Zosha, but I thought she had been moved in the direction of thinking like maybe somebody's in there, and maybe like I'll be able to access her, and yeah, I can play nice with the hive because it makes my life a little bit better. But I didn't think Carol was like this far on the side of protecting the pluribus as one. But it seems like she's really gotten there. By the time Manousos shows up, it really feels like she sees the pluribus differently. It did make me feel a little bit like, why did we abandon the whiteboard, for one thing? And it felt like we abandoned Wycaro. And that was something that I was pretty sad never came back up in this episode. So Manousos shows up and they have a grump off. See who's more grumpy. He finds a sensor in Carol's liquor cabinet. She calls the hive and asks them if they planted it there. And she speaks to Zosha on the phone, which causes Manousos to see like that Carol's bonding with this hive member. So he calls the same hive member and like wants to mess with whoever Carol's involved with, which I was joking with the clip in the beginning, but like this scene showed a little bit that this show was originally written for a male main character. It did make me also wonder why. I think like this might be something that I'd be interested in doing like a deeper dive on, but like why Carol was written as a lesbian. Like I believe they said like way back when the series was conceived, Vince Gilligan had written the main character to be a man, and I don't know which version it was and like how similar it was to this draft, but some of this episode made me think that like there was no layer added of Manousos like kind of reacting or responding to the fact that Carol's a lesbian, and I think that's a little unrealistic for anyone, not necessarily because Manousos is religious, but also because we saw some indications that Manousos is culturally Christian, which obviously doesn't make you homophobic, but it would have been maybe interesting to explore. It felt a little like the grump off was like this cute who is more of a curmudgeonly character, but I don't know. It's possible that realistically they would have more ideological differences than just which side of being friends with the hive they're on or which side of interacting with the hive they're on. And eventually, when Manousos asks Carol about whether she's going to pick the world or the girl, I guess just as a lesbian watching it, I was kind of like, how is this not colored just a little bit with the fact that this is a non-traditional relationship to these like existing human characters? I guess I would be interested. I mean, I think something that is so thematic about Carol being a lesbian is the fact that the hive erased biases and biases against her, and the fact that we actually haven't seen any character, not saying that it needed to be Manousos because it might have overcomplicated their working relationship. It might have, that might not have worked in the story, but the fact that we haven't actually seen any of the characters be homophobic to Carol feels unrealistic to me and feels a little bit like a missed opportunity to juxtapose how unjoined humans would be versus how joined humans would be. And again, I think like this is an active thought that I'm having, so I think maybe it deserves a bit more research and a bit more conceptualizing, because I don't necessarily agree with the idea that it needed to be Manousos. Maybe it would have been interesting if it was someone. We get the story that like Carol went to conversion camp and that the hive reminds her of the people who wanted to convert her. But something that's terrible about the hive is that they remove such beautiful parts of culture, which we saw with the Kusumayo character. But, there's also biases in culture. So I don't know, that's like a layer of something that could be problematic with humans and better with the pluribus that might have been interesting to explore. And I guess it did feel a little bit like a missed color to me. But maybe that's just my own internalized homophobia, is like when I'm like watching him say this choice, it feels different to me, a stranger saying to a straight man, the girl or the world, or the stranger saying to a straight woman, like, are you gonna pick this man? Okay, never mind. That's I can't imagine that one, actually. I can't imagine anyone writing that version. But the reason Manousos poses the question of the girl of the world is because he was trying to get some data on how the PLUR1BUS connects to each other, I think, by looking at a little radio signal and disturbing the connection by screaming at a PLUR1BUS person. I thought that was a cool experiment. I hoped that he got some data from it. I wanted to kind of know what that data was, but I guess that's a season 2 problem. And I think the one thing about it that I didn't understand was, and I've watched the episode a few times now, and I can't find the moment, but Zosha says that Manousos warned them before he did what he did so that they could get ready, which is why she like lied on the floor and stuff. And I guess I couldn't figure out exactly how he would have done that or known to do it. Maybe he observed when they disconnected when Carol yelled at them. I'm just not sure. But I wasn't sure how he would know to warn them, how he would know what to do in order to disconnect them, and at what point he would have warned them. I guess he could have warned literally any of them, like just the guy he was talking to, but I wasn't quite sure. I was a little confused about that line, and I was also confused as to why it was necessary. I guess it indicates that Manousos thinks about the PLUR1BUS people as humans still, like the bodies at least, as human lives, which is maybe a fact that we didn't know, and maybe that is why we got that line. The other interpretation might be that we got that line because the audience isn't supposed to like immediately think Manousos killed a bunch of people. I almost understand so much that Manousos doesn't see the PLUR1BUS as human people that I wouldn't really think that he saw that as murder. Maybe it was simply so that you wouldn't assume that the PLUR1BUS was going to clean up bodies. They're just fleeing Manousos because they need space. Anyway, Manousos gives Carol the option of the girl of the world, and Carol chooses the girl until they go on this little honeymoon, and the girl tells Carol that this entire time they've been trying to convert her eggs into stem cells so that they can convert her into the joined, which is a huge betrayal. It does explain to me the big question that I had about the episode, which was like, why are we not a little bit further along? Why do we have to watch Carol side with the PLUR1BUS and kind of go back to this side when the entire Charm Offensive, she was still taking notes on them. She said like, something needs to be done. I'm not going to give up. And so I was confused as to why we had to watch another episode of Carol deciding to save the world instead of siding with the PLUR1BUS. And I guess this is why. Because it's worth it for the reveal that this girl that Carol's building a relationship with now has betrayed her so thoroughly. And then she asks the PLUR1BUS for an atom bomb, which I thought was hilarious, but also I've seen a lot of people wondering what she's going to do with it, and I think it's a simple answer of she's not actually planning on using it for anything, but it was proof to her. Like, if the egg thing was not enough proof, she needed to prove to herself that she does not like the PLUR1BUS. And one of those big issues, big moral, ethical dilemmas that she had with them was the fact that they would give someone an atom bomb. And there was hesitation when she asked the PLUR1BUS if they would give her an atom bomb. And I think she needed to show herself, these people are not human. They're not going to refuse this, and that is evidence that they're not human. And, you know, what is the one thing that really shows me that this is like a bad community? And she didn't see the first scene, which told the audience that she needed the evidence, which is that they would give her an atom bomb. So even though I don't think she actually planned to use it, I think it had utility, and that utility was evidence that she is against them. And then she shows up and tells Manousos that he wins. We save the world, which is funny because Carol is bad. She wasn't going to save the world if it didn't benefit her. But everybody's a little bit bad. But they're people and we still like them. That's part of the point, I think.